Wow, look at how complex and challenging this exercise looks. This means it must be a great movement, right? But what makes an exercise good? Now clearly I'm joking, but this is an interesting question. What does make an exercise good? And I think by the end of this video, a lot of you might be reevaluating the exercises you choose on a day-to-day basis. So let's take a closer look. I appreciate you guys clicking on today's video. This is Science-Based Fitness, where I break down different fitness topics and shed my scientific perspective. Now, when it comes to answering this question, it's clearly somewhat subjective. It will be specific to your individual goal. But I think there's clearly exercises that will be more beneficial, and there's factors that need to be weighed out ahead of time. So I'm going to elegantly lay out those 4 points, or at least try to elegantly lay them out, and we're first going to look at tension. Now you can see here a pec deck machine which provides tension throughout the exercise. Now tension is one of the main drivers behind hypertrophy, and without getting too deep into this, I do want to show you a resistance profile. When we are lifting a weight, there's a change in the amount of resistance that the muscle experiences, and that will change throughout the lift. And you can see that displayed here. On the y-axis we have resistance, and on the x-axis we have the length of our muscle. A simple bicep curl will see peak resistance roughly around 90 degrees, but some exercises don't fare well when it comes to resistance profiles, like a dumbbell fly for example, but the pec deck machine does much better. I do have to add that this is clearly in a perfect scenario. Not every machine provides consistency. Cams can change, the length of a lever can change, and each machine is somewhat different, but in a perfect world scenario, we could increase our tension by simply adding more resistance. So side raises are another good example. So here's our resistance profile. We don't experience max tension until the top of the movement. How could we improve this? Here's a cable side raise, and I love this variation. Now, of course, this is our perfect world profile curve. In real life, it's not this consistent, but you get the idea that we're getting much more consistent tension throughout the whole range of motion. Now, this topic is really cool, and I could spend a lot more time discussing these resistance profiles. If you guys are interested, let me know in the comments, and I'll do a full in-depth video on that, but I want to jump into our second topic, and that is muscle activation. Now, I have to say, one of my favorite things in the exercise world is EMG data. So electrodes are placed onto muscles, and people perform different exercises, and we can determine which exercises create a larger percentage of muscle activation. Knowing this information can allow us to target specific muscles that we want to train a little bit more. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say we're someone trying to grow our glutes, and there's a ton of EMG data on glutes. If we compare the deadlift, the back squat, and the step up, what exercise do you think creates the most glute activation? Now you might be surprised by this, but it's the step ups, and by a good deal. And this type of data can be found for pretty much every muscle group. So this EMG data can just simply allow us to better understand what muscle we're targeting the most with our exercises. And if you guys want a more in-depth video about these glutes and EMG data on them, I'll link a video at the end of this. So knowing this information just simply gives us a better understanding of what exercises we should be trying to emphasize more. But EMG data isn't everything, and I think that's important as we step into our third factor here, and that's going to be load. Let's look back at our step-ups that we just talked about. If you have balance issues and you're trying to load this exercise, you're going to struggle. And if your goal is to get stronger, strength goals flourish under heavy loads. So using the appropriate loads is important, and I think the bench press is a perfect example of this. Actually, it kind of encompasses everything we've talked about so far. Bench press has some of the highest EMG activation for the pecs. It provides good tension throughout the movement and allows us to load the movement with heavy weight if we want. Compared to something like a push-up, loading a push-up, even though it's a very similar movement, presents a lot of challenges. So this comes down to goal specific once again. Maybe an athlete in the off season, maybe a power lifter, heck, anyone just looking to get stronger really needs to make sure they select the right exercise that allows them to load said exercise. Moving on to our fourth factor, and I do want to pause for a second and just say that I have one additional tip I want to add at the end of this video, and if you guys are enjoying this, please hit that like button. I think there's a subscribe button down there somewhere. I don't see it. Maybe a super thanks too, I'm not sure. But our fourth factor is going to be stability, and we kind of just touched on stability a second ago, but it might be more important than you think, and this is where machines can be very helpful. Let's take a look at a chest press machine. A chest press machine will limit the recruitment of your core and stabilizing muscles. So this doesn't sound like a good thing. Well, it might be. Being in a more stable stable environment on a machine will allow us to focus on the desired pec muscle that we're trying to train. Whereas movements like this have its place. They're great for balance, core activation, and stability. But having a more stable environment is going to allow for better targeting of the desired muscle. Like I said in the beginning, I think a lot of this comes down to your specific goal. Now, the final half tip I wanted to add here was range of motion. The research is limited, but data does show that full range of motion increases hypertrophy, but the systematic review I found on this really only concluded this for the lower body. Now, I think partial and half rep exercises have their place in developing strength and helping with the neuromuscular adaptations and improving any sticking points that you might have, but I would probably argue that if you're doing partial exercises, making sure you're still mixing in a decent amount of full range of motion exercises, as long as there's no injuries that limit that. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the buttons. That video I talked about before was right up top here, and YouTube recommends this one, so have at it. We'll see you guys next time. Have a good day.